It was only in the middle of her wedding ceremony that our female protagonist received her memories of a previous life. She realized that this world was set within an atone game, one that she had played in her last life, revolving around the aristocrats of high society, and she was the character who had horribly bullied and tormented the heroine. A villainess who received her just desserts by having to marry an ugly aged man. Her eyes widen when she catches sight of the prince, but the surprise quickly hardens into a glare. In this world she is known as Celestine, the daughter of the Marquess and the first prince's fiancée. But that same prince gave his heart to the heroine instead. She did everything she could to eliminate that woman who had threatened her future place by his side. However, once the prince learned of her childish torment, he used it as a pretext to dissolve their engagement. And so this abominable wedding awaits her. Her husband-to-be the prime minister is constantly embroiled in nasty rumors, most of which condemns him as a disgusting womanizer and lecherous pervert. She bitterly thinks all of this is thanks to His Highness' suggestion. The prince turns to the girl by his side, smiling as she tells him the wedding dress sure is pretty. While the other nobles stare at her, Celestine feels as though they're gawking at a public execution. Her attention snaps back when the priest announces it is time to exchange vows and seal the union with a kiss. Her eyes widen at the sight of her husband, unable to believe that this man is her husband. Suddenly, a thought slams to her. He isn't bad at all. She has only ever seen him as a repulsive and toadish man before. In fact, she didn't even try to hide her disgust whenever she glanced in his direction. So just why is her heart beating so fast? She knows this is downright bizarre. She means he must be at least twice her age. It's unthinkable, but still she can't help but wonder, could this be because of the memories of her past life? With a sudden lift of her chin, he tells her there is no reason to fear, calling her his lovely lady. Once again, her heart races. Finding it all too absurd, her vision starts to spin. Somehow, after she had fallen asleep last night, she began recalling the memories of her previous incarnation in more detail. Her father had passed on very early into her childhood. Perhaps because of that, she had always yearned for affection from an older man and saw them in a romantic light. Basically what they call a panther. She then turns to her husband, poking him in the shoulder. He sits up, rubbing his eyes. She apologizes for waking him up, but then leans closer to him. With a light smile, she admits last night was wonderful. He flatly asks if her maid taught her to say something like that, remarking women always utter such platitudes, and declares as young and beautiful as she is, her feelings are of little interest to him. She thinks to herself, what an awful retort. By the virtue of the tastes she has inherited from her previous life, she feels she can even look past that comment. It is as if the past her and present her are becoming one and the same. Or rather, it is as if the memories of her previous life are growing increasingly stronger. She ignores his words and tells him he must have been ever so popular until now, hasn't he? But from now on she wants to be the one and only recipient of his affections, unless he would hate the idea of that. He sighs, admitting he will devote all his attention to her for the time being, but warns heaven knows how long that will last. He then turns to her and she stares into his eyes, wondering just how can she let her feelings touch his heart. Later at the table, she chastises him, claiming his meals are far too greasy and oily, and says she must eat more vegetables and take care of his health. She asks if he intends to make her a young widow. He stares flatly at the plates of salad in her hands and mutters that he will not eat like a rabbit. Then, with dry finality, he declares that if the only alternative is an early grave, so be it. Her angry glare forces him to pick up the salad and start chomping, which finally earns a smile from her. From then on, their married life together was surprisingly peaceful and fulfilling. One day, as they sit together, he asks her how does she feel about him. She's surprised for a moment, but then blurts his breath has an awful stench. Her words strike him in the chest. She goes on that he's always acting as if he is above everyone and everything, and when he sneezes, nothing escapes the ensuing spittle shower. He has absolutely no taste, and watching him tell his awful old man jokes in public is enough to make her want to die from embarrassment. But before she can tell him the thing she loves about him, he suddenly cuts her off, saying that's enough. He says being forced to marry an ugly old man like him against her wishes. He is fully aware of just how much she must loathe him. Without warning, he exclaims he never would have imagined him to be this lovely. At first he had every intention of administering the punishment that the prince had requested of him upon her, but that was then. She watches him as he avoids her gaze and admits he fell in love with her, despite being unworthy of her. He tells her that if she wishes, she may drain his coffers and he will turn a blind eye even should she take other lovers. In return, all he asks is that she remain by his side. She falls silent for a moment before saying she will be honest with him so he must not speak of such things again. Then she adds that if her gaze ever turned to another man, he would hate it, wouldn't he? Likewise, if her lord became besotted with another woman, she would beat that thieving cat black and blue. And never utter a word to him again. He blurts he would never be unfaithful. He would never wrong her and pleads with her to continue to stay, smiling by his side. As they walk together, every gaze follows them in awe, whispers rising, who on earth is she? So beautiful, like a living goddess of the night. Just then, they come across the prince, who looks taken aback and asks if she is truly Celestine. She answers with casual grace, saying it has indeed been quite some time, and thanks him profusely for gracing them with his presence this evening. She adds, almost sweetly, that it is also thanks to His Highness's blessing that they are able to enjoy such a lovely married life together. The prince regards her with surprise before remarking, almost at a loss, that she has truly changed, hasn't she? Celestine smirks faintly and replies so he has noticed. Then she goes on to say her husband has managed to lose a little weight, refined his hairstyle and taste in evening attire, and even polished his column until her husband cuts her off. He tells her the prince was speaking of her. Turning back to His Highness, the lord smoothly asks what he thinks of his wife's dress this evening. The prince, clearly flustered, replies that it flatters her greatly. The lord says the truth is this dress was crafted in the Solier style. It is seen from a type of silk produced from silkworms endemic to Solier. He then tells his wife she should be grateful it is all because of His Highness that such an exquisite dress could be prepared for her. The prince looks surprised and asks what does he mean by that. Before he can reply, a voice cuts through the air, announcing His Majesty wishes to make an announcement. His Majesty appears, declaring he wishes to make an announcement this evening concerning the marriage of his son, the first prince. He flinches in surprise while his lover next to him looks excited. She suddenly blushes and says this is too sudden. But just then, the king declares he shall be wedded to Her Majesty the Queen of Solier. His eyes go wide in shock. His father continues that the first prince is to become the Queen of Solier's 13th consort and he is to deport it at dawn tomorrow. He calls out to his father, telling him this isn't a bit funny and to stop joking. His father flatly says his words are not in jest. The decision has already been made, and the second prince shall be instated as crown prince, so the matter of inheritance is no cause for worry. Suddenly, his lover blurts but she has been His Highness' fiancée all along, hasn't she? His Majesty says the Queen is well acquainted with the fact. She has also made it clear that she is happy to accept her alongside him as one of her concubines and she also said she should personally take great pleasure in ensuring they are both well cared for. Whispers ripple through the crowd, murmuring that the Queen is truly wild. And the word is that gender is of little consequence to her. The Lord thinks it was thanks to the prince's suggestion that he was able to enjoy the marital bliss he has right now. Originally, the thought of scheming against someone he was indebted to had never crossed his mind. But he would do anything to protect his wife. The prince and that little girl were still plotting to hurt her even after all this time. He's offended that they truly believed he was blind to their intentions. As soon as they learned of how Celestine and they were happily married, they planned to have him removed from his position. However, the people they tried to conspire with were already firmly in his pocket. After all, the royal family are nothing if not puppets to the office of the Prime Minister. To be ignorant of the true authority pulling the strings of this country. Such pitiful children. The prince flinches when the Lord offers his heartfelt congratulations. He casually says he has heard that his betrothed is very pleased with his looks. And by dint of his engagement they were able to finalize a very lucrative trade deal involving Solier itself that would make other countries green with envy. He smiles as the prince finally realizes he has been fooled, remarking that this will surely bring a prosperous future for their country. The weight of his words sinks into him and he turns to Celestine who manages a simple smile as she offers her congratulations. His lord then suggests they take their leave, to which she giggles softly and agrees. From now on she is determined to be by his side. Now then shall they walk hand in hand down the flowery path of evil. On their way back in the carriage, Celestine notices a few wild rabbits darting through the grass and asks if they weren't cute, to which her husband calmly replies that they are lively creatures and would make excellent pelts. She falls silent, making him wonder if his answer has been clumsy, but when she only smiles turns to the window, his face flushes red. Soon after, she asks where the carriage is headed. And he explains that he has recently acquired new land to inspect, which brings them at last to a quiet building, where Celestine looks around in surprise and asks what place this was, only for him to answer simply that it is an orphanage. The former lord of these lands was quite partial to this orphanage in particular, so he, as the new lord, thought he should at least make an appearance. An old man greets them with a warm smile and introduces himself as the director of the orphanage. The lord then says the goddess by his side is his wife. The director looks stunned by her beauty. The lord says he is sure there must have been no shortage of confusion caused by the sudden change in this landslide, but rest assured he do not intend on changing the existing support for the orphanage and tells him to continue to operate without worries. The director beams, saying if it so pleases him, would he allow the children the opportunity to greet as well. He then calls out the children. They all come running, looking at them with excited faces. Celestine smiles at their cuteness while the lord looks overwhelmed. The lord then tells Celestine he prepared some small gifts for the children in advance. And then decides to speak with the director on the finer details of the orphanage's future. After he leaves clumsily, she glances at him, thinking her lord who's helpless before children is ever so cute. Before turning back to the children and thanking them for their excellent greetings. She then introduces herself and starts talking to them. In the distance, a boy leaning against a tree glares at her. While the gifts are being distributed among the children, she tells them there is plenty for everyone so not to fight. A girl looks at her in awe and asks if she is a princess. She's taken aback by her compliment, so she asks what makes her think so. The girl beams, saying it's because she's all sparky, like a princess from a fairy tale, and her dress is super pretty. The others laugh and start calling her princess, which makes her smile, until she freezes when the boy from earlier, Ethan, calls out to them with a glare. Suddenly, he screams, "Who cares if that woman is a princess or not?" and declares she's just another one of those vile noblewomen, warning them not to fall for her tricks. But a boy points out she brought everyone all these presents, and are not these sweets from her really tasty? But Ethan snaps, it is all in act. These nobles only care about acting all superior and looking down on the rest of them who are not high-born like them. Celestine calmly states she doesn't have the inclination towards looking down on anyone in such a manner. He snaps at her to save her lies. Dress it up however she likes, the fact remains. She keeps her composure and asks him just what exactly is he so angry about. He retorts, everyone here remembers what happened when the previous lord's daughter visited. That woman shed tears as if she truly pitied them, and just like she did today, she prepared a bunch of presents as well. Celestine says that is a wonderful person, then. Ethan admits that is what they all thought as well at first, that it was purely from the goodness of her heart, but then he points at the little child clinging to her and says that woman kicked Ted there with everything she had. All because her dress would be ruined if he touched it with his dirty, drool-covered hands. Those were the words she hurled at Ted, even though he was crying in pain. His eyes turn accusing as he declares that's nobles for them. And declares no matter how prettily they sugarcoat their words, deep down they scorn them like they are idiots. She doesn't bother replying and casually pulls the children closer. The girl hesitates, telling her to let go. She was pulling out weeds earlier and Ted's hands are dirty as well. But, Celestine counters, isn't it fine if her dress is dirty? What's stopping her from simply buying a new one? She gently tells them to not tar her with the same brush as those who are nobles who would say such miserly things. As she turns to leave, Ethan grits his teeth and accuses her of taking from those weaker than herself while she sits in comfort at home, telling her to stop being so arrogant. She turns back to him with calm defiance, remarking that though he may look like the oldest among them, in truth he's more childish than any of them. She points out all the other children instinctively know that it is in their best interest to get on her good side, and yet here he stands, trying to lay waste to the only chance these children may ever have with his pretty pride. He snaps at her to shut up. But she continues in her compost on saying isn't he equally arrogant to complain and deride those arrogant nobles whose charity is keeping all of them clothed and fed? At last, she declares, the weak are exploited by the strong, such as the natural order of this world. No matter how much the powerless whine and bemoan their station, words alone shall never amount to anything. She notices him trembling and points it out, asking if she upset him. Suddenly she leans in closer, whispering, in that case, why doesn't he try to pay back the favor as good as he gets? She will always be waiting for him so he can be sure to grow up splendidly. He looks confused and mutters what the hell, but she declares the truth is it is the wealthy who are the stingiest of them all, and she would utterly know to waste even a single coin if she can help it. So when people like herself donate to a place like this, it is not charity but an investment in all of their futures. His eyes surge with determination as he calls out to her, vowing that one day, when he grows up, he will be richer than anyone else, and when that day comes, she must believe he will repay the favor in full. She only smirks, saying she will look forward to it. Meanwhile, the director, still in shock, asks again if the previous lord, the Baron, was truly charged and found guilty. The Lord answers yes, of both corruption and treason, calling him a villain in every possible sense. The director remarks that for someone of his caliber to inherit this land is a stroke of great fortune for them all, and thinking about Celestine, adds that with such a young and beautiful wife at his side, he must surely be a man of high rank, one in whom the orphanage's future is safe. Realizing too late his words might sound rude, he hastens to explain that he knows little about him, as the handover of the region came on such short notice. The Lord calls out to the director, remarking that, as he must surely tell from just one glance at his wife, he has no inclination for women on the younger side, and adds that rumor has it the late Baron ran such a business as well. The director, flustered, admits that when the Baron was caught, he was honestly wondering what course to take. The Lord's eyes narrow as he says, "So I was right," and the director confirms it, explaining that although the girls they first heard of were of age, they have already been moved, but if he can wait just 3 more years, the ones they have now will grow splendidly. He even offers, almost casually, that if he prefers a boy instead, they have one at hand. At that moment the doors slam open and guards flood into the room, seizing the director, who stares in stunned disbelief. One of the knights turns to the Prime Minister and announces that they will begin searching for records and receipts of sale to track down the children who were sold. He replies to keep it quiet as he would rather not cause Celestine any worry, so make sure she doesn't catch any wind of this. The director snaps, demanding to know why, scoffing that the Prime Minister is snuffing out one trivial crime. Does he truly believe that will change the world at all? He insists that of all people, the Prime Minister should know better. He replies coldly that the notion of changing the world has never interested him, everything he does is for Celestine's future. Anyone who dares to harm her or abets those who would will be dealt with as he sees fit. Desperate now, the director cries that he has never once done anything to harm his wife. The Lord only answers with chilling casualness, reminding him that the Baron had a beloved daughter he doted on, thinking of the prince's lover. He adds her main source of financial support was her father, the Baron. Naturally, that did not sit well with him. If the director must hold a grudge, he should hold it against the Baron for being far too soft with his daughter. With that, he asks his men to take the director away. On their way back, Celestine asks him if he defeated the villain he was after today. The Lord remarks so she noticed. She smiles and says yes. None of the children looked underfed, however neither their skin nor hair showed any signs of care. Most importantly, amongst the older children, not a single one was a girl. It was plain to see that it wasn't an orphanage run with particularly philanthropic intentions. He sighs and says he cannot deny that. She reaches out to cup his cheek and says, "From now on, they have to defeat every villain they come across, don't they? Since, after all, villains other than themselves are nothing but an eyesore, aren't they?" As she settles into his arms, he murmurs that yes, the only evil that needs to flourish is theirs, after all. She then tells him she also came across an interesting boy while she was there, then leans in to whisper against his ear that he has something great within him. She could see it clearly in his eyes. Afterwards, that boy graduated from the same orphanage safely, and after making his way to the capital and knocking on many doors, he landed an apprenticeship with an affluent merchant. Eventually, he grew up to become an exceptional merchant who proved to be of great service to the family of the Prime Minister. But that's the story for another time. A hot purple dress. A bird of paradise hairpiece. Lubigamo's latest heels. As a girl stands before the mirror, she muses she really is the flower of high society. There is no way that she will ever lose to her. On the other hand, Celestine receives a letter from the orphanage children. She reads the letter and remarks they are really learning to write quite splendidly, are not they? In any case, it is glad to hear that they are all lively. The maid then pulls out something and says it arrived with the letters. Celestine guesses mud balls, perhaps. The maid says if they are, they did not survive the trip. Celestine is sure this was from Ted. The maid offers to dispose of it, but Celestine tells her no. It is such a splendid gift, she will have to be sure to put it to good use. As they arrive at the party, every head turns toward Celestine, admiring her beauty as always. The Prime Minister excuses himself with an apology, needing to attend to urgent business, and Celestine assures him it is fine since she had planned to join the other madams anyway. When she approaches them, one greets her with praise for looking as stunning as ever, another compliments her gown, and she graciously returns the compliment, telling them they look wonderful themselves. Their conversation flows easily until a sudden commotion draws every gaze to a young woman entering the hall. The ladies gush over her until the ones beside Celestine scoff, muttering that Miss Clara of House Bras is at it again. They whisper that the girl has been imitating Celestine at every turn and that tonight's gown is nearly identical to the one she wore to last week's party. Celestine only smiles, saying she doesn't particularly mind, but the women bristle, insisting Clara is going too far. But Celestine remarks that countless young ladies have tried to copy her before, and the others agree, dismissing Clara as someone far beneath Lady Celestine's circle. Their chatter turns to Clara's family while Clara listens in silence, gritting her teeth. One woman also remarks she is simply desperate to stand out in whatever way she can. Celestine tells her she's flattered that they would become so animated on her behalf. But she's sure there's something more entertaining to discuss. Her voice drops as she whispers, such as her dear husband snoring, for example. Her eyes soften as she asks the woman that when her husband starts snoring, doesn't she feel the overpowering urge to give him a great big hug? Admitting she cannot help but want to pamper him with a hug, and when she does, he always turns on his side and hugs her back. She declares snoring is good for his breathing, it's good for their love. It's simply an all-round god. But the woman doesn't look that touched by her husband snoring and complains he is getting on in years, so his musk makes it a bit overwhelming to hold him like that. Yet Celestine takes her words in an entirely different light and says she understands her perfectly. The musk is so overwhelmingly wonderful that it is near impossible to calm her passions enough to sleep. It is a scent that only a man of experience and wisdom can exude, isn't that right? It is also naturally a double-edged sword. Since she is sure, those pheromones of his must attract all manner of thieving cats. Meanwhile, the girls with Clara begin to pity her, thinking she isn't being seen as an equal at all. Clara grits her teeth before finally bursting out in anger. She declares that it feels as if someone is hell-bent on making her look like a fool. She insists she had been looking forward to unveiling this dress at tonight's party for months, only for someone to catch wind of it and parade it first to pass it off as their own fashion. No doubt, she says, someone with more money than sense must have bribed one of her household servants. At once, the others realize she is accusing Celestine of copying her. Outrage sparks on Celestine's behalf, but she gently urges everyone to calm down. She says it doesn't particularly matter who wore what first. When it comes to fashion, what matters most is the freedom to wear something that truly suits them. Wouldn't they agree? No one misses the underhanded comment and Celestine turns back to her friends, guiding the conversation with effortless grace. The girls fight to stifle their laughter, while Clara bites down on her finger, her fury barely concealed. Clara thinks how frustrating. It's like no matter what she does, she won't even do so much as look at her. But then Celestine's eyes drift to the Prime Minister, his aide pleading with him not to drink more wine as the madam had asked him to keep watch over him tonight. Clara realizes this is the Prime Minister. She recalls the rumors of his fondness for younger women and, emboldened, drifts over with a drink in hand. With a feigned stumble, she spills it on him, gasping out an apology and leaning close with a handkerchief. Wide-eyed, she murmurs if it pleases him, perhaps they could slip away somewhere private where she might make amends. To her shock, his expression hardens as he glares at her. First she drenches him in wine, now she dares to touch him so familiarly. What manner of girl is she? He demands her name, warning that whoever her father is, he will not hold his title come tomorrow. Clara trembles under the weight of his voice, but before she can say something, Celestine steps forward. Whispers ripple, is she about to plead for the very girl who had tried to humiliate her? Instead, she lifts her own glass and deliberately tips it over Clara's head. Eyes glinting with ice, she asks how dare she attempt to flirt with her husband in plain view of her. She then tells the Lord he doesn't have to be scared anymore as his Celestine is here. The Prime Minister tries to reason that she is merely a little girl he was handling, but she cuts him off, yelling just what on earth is he saying. She was about to push him down. He reminds her he is a grown man. Meanwhile, Clara sits trembling on the floor, every eye in the room fixed on her. One of the girls scoffs, wondering aloud what is wrong with such a vulgar display, while another leans closer and points out that her hairpiece, those feathers are obviously fake. A third laughs that her shoes look like something plucked straight off a common shelf. The irony is not lost on anyone. Though Clara had accused Celestine of imitation, no one could imagine Lady Celestine debasing herself with such shoddy adornments. Whispers sharpen to sneers as one girl remarks that Clara dares to pick a fight with Lady Celestine while being nothing more than the daughter of a viscount whose family barely clings to its title. Celestine glances at her and lets her know she is always determined to fight with any thieving cat who tries to get between them tooth and nail. However, on this occasion she may have gone somewhat overboard. With a smile, she suggests as an apology she could have a replacement dress arranged, and believes a more cute pastel-colored dress would suit her far better than a purple one. Suddenly Clara cries out, but that is not something Celestine would ever wear, and she wants to be like her. She wants to be a flower that nobody can look away from, just like her. Celestine is surprised at first, but then her smile returns and she admits she would like to wear a cute fluffy dress herself, but unfortunately it just wouldn't suit her at all. She offers her hand and reminds her, she said before, that the most important thing when it comes to fashion is freedom, did she not? She has her good qualities she should bring out as well. Celestine assures her she will be an outstanding beauty if she polishes her charms, but it's not something she can merely force overnight. She also points out that her skin is growing coarse, so she can tell she's not used to wearing makeup. Now that Celestine thinks of it, she has an excellent idea. She gives a bottle to her and Clara eyes it curiously. Celestine admits it is mud and tells her to apply it on her skin every night after taking off her makeup. Shocked, Clara repeats she is telling her to rub mud on her skin. Celestine smiles and says this is a special type of mud that she acquired via a secret route. If she uses this, she can have this skin that would be the envy of everyone. With that, she encourages her to bring out that glowing charm of hers. All the other girls rush eagerly to her side, each wanting the mud as well, but she only smiles apologetically, explaining that since it is a special product, she has only one to give away, but she promises she will be sure to send some to each of them when she is able to. Since she is indebted to everyone's kindness after all. And the first sample will only cost them a single silver coin. 1 month later, Clara twirls in her beautiful dress and Celestine smiles, remarking that it truly is a wonderful choice. Over tea, Celestine tells her she knew her eyes hadn't deceived her that night. Clara's gaze drifts to the necklace at Celestine's neck and she exclaims over the jewel's brilliance. Celestine smiles softly, explaining that she couldn't find the stone in the size she wanted, so she implored her husband to purchase the entire gem mine. Clara blurts out in shock, "The whole mine?" Before suddenly bursting into laughter. When Celestine asks what amuses her so, Clara admits it is just the realization of how silly she had been to ever think of competing with her. Her parents, who have always been living in the shadow of her late grandfather who was very influential, always told her that she had to become the flower of high society, and so since Celestine seemed like the living embodiment of what it meant to be the flower of high society, she really admired her. She wanted to be just like her, so she started to imitate everything about her. But an imitation is just an imitation. It was something that could only ever pale in comparison to the real thing. Her conscience reminded her she was not beautiful or rich like Lady Celestine, and eventually the admiration she felt for her turned into jealousy. Clara further admits whenever she looked at all the things she used to try and imitate her scattered around her room, she just grew more depressed that no matter what she did, she just felt like a fake. Celestine simply listens to her, but then Clara abruptly shifts the topic, remembering her friends were hoping if they could get some of the mud as well. Celestine asks her if she means to say the girls that came to the party with her that night. Celestine then says since they are her friends, she will draw a 2-year subscription contract with a monthly fee of 40 gold coins. Clara's eyes widen. She once again looks at the necklace and reminds her she said she asked the Prime Minister for it. Celestine simply smiles, thinking in a world where industrialization hasn't truly developed, acidity in rainfall is still low due to a lack of air pollution, meaning that the vast majority of soil is rich with minerals no matter where it is sourced from. And so that mere mud those adorable little children from the orphanage work hard to send can be put to very valuable use. She could hardly throw it away, now, could she? Looking up at Clara, Celestine remarks that while her style of dress has certainly changed, it feels as though the entire atmosphere around her has shifted as well. With a playful glint in her eyes, she teases, asking if perhaps Clara has found love since they last met. At that, a blush quickly rises to Clara's cheeks, and she admits she has already fallen completely in love with an exceptionally glamorous but not at all easy to understand person. His father was cold-hearted, unscrupulous with women, and an ugly man to boot. He didn't want to be like him, so he worked hard to become someone completely different in both appearance and personality. But one day, a single comment from his ex-fiancée struck him like a dagger. That became the unexpected trigger for the incident. Celestine's face is pale as she mumbles that it almost seems as though her husband is having an affair. The young man nearly chokes on the tea he was sipping, blurting his father is having an affair. Wiping his mouth, he quickly says that such a thing is impossible. He recalls her name is Celestine and she is his father's new wife and his stepmother. She was a marquis daughter and originally the fiancée of the first prince of the country. But due to the prince's scheme, she was forced to marry his much older father. His father is good at his job as a statesman, but he is unattractive, a womanizer, and on top of that, rumors about him are always dark and never-ending. He believes marrying someone like that must be unbearably painful. Or at least that's what he thought. So at first, he kept his distance. Celestine says the husband of hers is a bit on the heavier side but his cool-headedness is cute and dandy. She also claims he is kinder than anyone else and full of dignity and he is a perfect man with nothing but charm. She cries out that there's no way another woman would leave such a husband material alone and she knew a day like this would come. The young man stills and then mutters under his breath, "Is she sane?" It seems his father was the ideal man for her. What's even more surprising is that she was apparently a special person for his father as well. He thought he would change a little since meeting her but it seems people cannot change so easily. He asks her if there's any real reason for her to believe that. She explains at the recent soiree, someone who seemed to be his lover said to her to return to her precious person. She further adds she cannot forgive the lack of charm in that person. Her whole body shakes in fury as she mutters someone like that, that's just impossible. How can anyone be calm, at ease with such a plain person as a rival? She says she's flashy in a good way or in a bad way, overly extravagant and with someone like that as a rival, she thinks she cannot bring any comfort to her husband. He is shocked. Normally she is full of confidence with an elegance and beauty that won't bend to anyone, yet now she is stumbling over something like this. He is quiet for a moment, watching her before deciding they should go to where his father is. Suddenly, he seems determined to get to the bottom of this and states if it is really an affair, he will take responsibility and strike his father with the hammer of injustice. He also points out if there's something worrying a mother, it will affect the child in her womb too, right? She listens to him in silence before finally placing her hand in his outstretched one, realizing he is right. This kind of weak attitude isn't like her at all and she needs to stay strong for the child. Later, they arrive at a house, with Mark quietly asking his man if his father is there. The reply is yes, confirmed by the guards and an uneasy thought crosses Mark's mind, about a pregnant wife stepping into the home of her husband's lover. As they step inside, they find a young woman serving tea. She stiffens at the sight of them, calling Celestine's name in shock, but Celestine only narrows her eyes before forcing a polite smile, saying she merely had some small business with her husband and hoped she wasn't intruding. Mark leans close, whispering for her to calm down, reminding her that the goal is to uncover the truth and there's no point in showing hostility too soon. She mutters that he's right, the one she needs to confront is her husband. When he calls out, asking what the matter is and what business she has with him, her face twitches at his calm tone. Muttering that she's really angry right now, she accuses him of being too calm. Looking startled, he asks if the sapphire he bought her recently was too small. She shoots back that no, that isn't it at all. So then he asks if she learned about him eating high-calorie dishes at work. She mumbles she didn't know that and she will ask about that later. She snaps she came to confront him at the location of his affairs. He teases my cute Celestine asking if she is jealous, but assures her that is just a misunderstanding. Suddenly the girl yells. Isn't that obvious? She was thinking why did she suddenly show up just to have some business with the Prime Minister and asks her isn't that incredibly rude? Celestine turns to her in anger and demands who was she talking about. The person she mentioned the other day as a precious person. She blurts it is Mark Sama. And declares Mark Sama is her fiancé. Surprised, Celestine glances at Mark to confirm it, who hesitates before correcting she is his ex-fiancé then narrows his eyes at his father and demands why is he here. The Lord casually says he was thinking of revisiting and finalizing the talks about his marriage. And a man of his age without a wife or even a fiancé would be quite embarrassing. Mark says they will discuss it another time. Suddenly his fiancée snaps, asking why. From where she remembers, he was also eager about this engagement before. Suddenly she says, so the rumor is true after all. Celestine repeats a rumor. So the girl snaps, it is a ridiculous rumor that the child in her womb is Mark's. Shocked, Celestine snaps back, what is that supposed to mean? And declares she has devoted herself to her husband alone in this life. Both husband and wife appear utterly enamored with one another, so Mark casually points a finger at them and asks her if the misunderstanding has cleared up now. She lowers her voice and quietly asks him why, only for him to sigh and answer cursed blood, leaving her eyes widening in shock. He reminds her she went to a special soiree where people hid their eyes behind a mask. She was with her friends while he was also dragged there by his friend. He happened to overhear her talking. She was giggling to her friends and said he was certainly charming, but that cursed blood and all, it was about his hair. His family has a history of thinning hair. She didn't want to believe it, but seeing her father, who knew what could happen. She blurts that is not true, that cursed blood thing was just a joke. And even if such a future comes, she will continue to love him. Celestine suddenly snaps, saying she's been hearing them the whole time, bald this, bald that, before pointing furiously at her husband, declaring he's O-shaped while Mark is M-shaped, completely different patterns of baldness. To lump them together and spout about cursed blood as if she knows it all is nothing but an insult. Besides, balding isn't something to give up on, it's a wonderful option. Mark bursts into laughter, unable to believe she just called baldness an option. Celestine whirls on him, snapping that he should just go home, since they'll be returning to research hair growth medicine. But Mark teases her, asking isn't baldness supposed to be a wonderful option? She retorts that it's her opinion, though she doubts he feels the same. The Lord, intrigued, tries to inquire about the medicine, only for Celestine to shut him down, saying that his hair follicles are already dead, so it's far too late and pointless. Later, the marriage with Mark's ex-fiancée was officially annulled, and with an apology for causing a scene, the commotion was brought to an end. Holding a book, he eyes it warily. The rumor about him being with Celestine was even turned into a story. Some people sure have a lot of time on their hands. But leaving the rumor as it is might not be so bad. His much older father will pass on, leaving her behind. After that, he will be the only one who can protect her and the child. It might be interesting to let the rumor become the truth. In any case, it is still a distant future. Just then Celestine enters, her eyes gleaming as she announces good news. The hair growth medicine is complete. He can't believe she actually made one. She replies she made sure to be producible in large quantities, so she's thinking about distribution to the nobles. He murmurs that is so like her. She adds she also plans to be a bit creative with the selling method. She leans close and whispers in his ear that she'll sell it through acquaintances, who will pass it on to theirs, with each seller earning a margin. Then she asks if he doesn't think people will buy it like crazy once she tells them the money will roll in even while they're asleep. He pulls back, staring at her in surprise, only for her to soften with a shy smile as she admits there's a dress she has her eye on. The way she laughed was as beautiful as a flower, and he couldn't take his eyes off her. A man watches his plants with a smile, murmuring to himself the leaves have a good color and they are growing strong today as well. His brother hugs him from behind. Jace reminds his brother he told him not to run wild in the greenhouse. His brother dismissively says he heard it before, quickly asking him if it is true that he is going to study abroad in the neighboring country. Jace grumbles it is true, but why is he making such a fuss? His brother retorts because he will get to meet that Christine. He sighs, muttering it is that book again. The book his little brother is so obsessed with is currently a global hit, a trending book. It's about a beautiful woman married off to an ugly, rich middle-aged man who falls in love with her stepson. And the characters are said to be based on real people. Apparently, they are based on the wife and stepson of the Prime Minister at his study abroad destination. He sent a letter expressing his hope to study abroad for a short period in one of the world's leading economic powers, and he received a reply saying that as a prince of friendly nation he would be welcomed. Once he arrives in the neighboring country, there will probably be a welcoming event. He might meet them there. He tells his little brother he's not going there to play around. His brother flatly says he knows that, but it wouldn't hurt to show a little interest. Jace grumbles he would rather look at a plant encyclopedia than read those unhealthy romance novels. His brother remarks he should really start taking more of an interest in romance in women. Nonetheless, no matter how much he is, he will definitely be captivated if he meets Celestine. He thinks a peerless beauty, huh? The model for the book's heroine, Christine, is said to be Celestine. But it is said she is a flashy woman with expensive tastes and not satisfied with just power and wealth. She is said to be living a decadent life, even desiring young men. Honestly, his impression of her is the worst. With a smile, his brother requests him to make sure to tell him all about it when he returns. Jace warns his brother that the stories he is hoping for probably won't be there. And he's going to study for the development of this country. Later, at the welcome banquet, he looks completely off guard. He never thought for the sake of a mere underage prince, such a banquet of this scale would be held. His eyes catch on a tree, and he blinks in surprise, wondering if it's made of candy. It's beautiful, dazzling in its style, and he can't help but think, as expected of one of the world's greatest powers. Also wondering if this level of banquet is always held here. Is their country more backward than he thought? He overhears some guests remarking how tonight's party, though small in number, is lavishly elaborate, a far cry from the stale gatherings of recent years. It dawns on him that this event is something special, even by this country's standards, and he smiles, thinking there must be a master of the art behind it. The men go on to reveal that the party was planned by Lady Celestine herself, at the request of His Majesty the King. They blush as they speak of her, praising her beauty and exquisite taste, and they cannot help but envy the Prime Minister. He is surprised at first but then suspects if it was all just a ploy of that infamous woman to build her reputation. Turning back to the glittering tree, he wonders if she used power or money to have someone create this. He was happy thinking they prepared this venue with welcoming a prince in mind. What a disappointment. Suddenly one of the men exclaims it is Lady Celestine, the goddess of the night has descended. Before even lifting his eyes at her, Jace decides no matter how beautiful her appearance is, there's no charm in a person who lacks substance. He finally looks at her and he stills. He lifts a hand to his chest, startled by the quickened beat of his own heart. His attention shifts to the nearby girls whispering about how Lady Celestine only recently gave birth, yet her figure remains flawless. They gush that her child is a boy, and that her eldest stepson, Mark Sama, is said to be especially fond of her. With dreamy sighs, they add that it's a relief the two seem to share such a good relationship, as together they would make a perfect couple. Once his heartbeat steadies, his expression slips back into neutrality, reminding himself not to be swayed. He turns and greets the Prime Minister, confessing that he never imagined he would meet such an outstanding statesman, an encounter that alone makes his study abroad worth a fortune. The Prime Minister says he prays this experience proves fruitful, and casually mentions that it was his wife who decorated tonight's venue. Jace muses he must say his wife has created wonderful things that caught his eyes, especially the candy crafts. With a glimmer of pride, the Lord adds that his guest has a sharp eye, for those candy pieces were something his wife poured her heart into. Celestine, smiling, remarks that she had heard of the warm climate of his country and thought candy might delight his gaze. Jace admits the towering candy craft is unlike anything he has ever seen, it would melt instantly back home. Then with interest, he asks if she knew the candy design represents their national flower. It is a flower not widely known, yet she seems to know it intimately. Celestine replies she has always loved the flower tree. It blooms naturally for only a short time, then its beauty disappears in an instant. But there is something so endearing about how it blooms so gracefully. Her smile deepens as she adds they have such a lovely national flower, she envies them. His heart skips a beat once again. Some days later, his men inform him the time for his appointment with the Prime Minister is approaching. A few days later after the party, he received an invitation from the Prime Minister to his mansion. It is supposed to be a simple tea, but he wonders why would the busy Prime Minister, even though he is a prince, invite him? Suddenly, a thought flashes through his mind, that with the Prime Minister busy in some work, it is Celestine who accompanies him. The notion jolts him, leaving him startled at himself. What was he even thinking? He steels his mind, reminding himself that adultery is the mark of the lowest of men and that he is finally able to have a conversation with the Prime Minister. As the Prince of Nation, he must make this tea party meaningful. Over tea, the Prime Minister tells him he has prepared some specialty leaves for the occasion and hopes he enjoys them. The prince thanks him, though he feels a flicker of unease, wondering what is this pressure. Then the Prime Minister introduces his son, Mark. So this is the rumored man, Jace thinks. Mark casually remarks that his stepmother had something she could not miss, so she isn't present today, before offering a smile and a polite apology. Jace's face tightens with discomfort, and he hurriedly insists it is nothing. The Prime Minister smoothly shifts the topic, mentioning that he heard Jace toured the city earlier, and asks how he found it. He replies everything in the shops was fresh to him and above all, the bridges and roads were well maintained and the city was very beautiful. With a smile, the Prime Minister remarks it is impressive that he noticed the maintenance, especially at such a young age. And a well-maintained city generates economic flow, so they must carefully consider how to use taxes. Now that he speaks of it, he heard there is talk of introducing new tax policies in his country as well. He looks surprised when the Prime Minister asks him if he would mind sharing some details for reference. Shaken, he replies that it is still in the discussion phase, though inside he is reeling, such knowledge should only be in the hands of a select few. Yet the Prime Minister continues with another seemingly casual question, each one deepening his shock. At last, he rises abruptly, drawing a concerned glance. The Prime Minister asks if something is wrong. Flustered, he blurts that he is embarrassed to admit it, but he may have grown a little tired. The Prime Minister remarks that fatigue is no good and suggests he take a walk through the garden for a change of pace. His wife is very proud of the garden she designed, he explains. Though she is absent today, the prince is free to enjoy it. Once he leaves, Mark smirks. Attacking him with family matters, his father really has no sense of decorum. The other counters, pure-hearted people like him always take things too seriously. That's why he gave him a little lesson. Outside, Jace thinks he actually ended up running away, realizing he is still so immature. A voice calls out his name and he turns in surprise, only to find Celestine. Later they sit together and he explains he was attending a tea party today. She wonders why neither of them told her. He thinks that must have been on purpose. She then looks down at the child in her arms and explains the child was fussing so she had to excuse herself early. He apologizes but says if the baby was fussing, wouldn't it have been better to leave it to the servants as his mother always did that? But to his shock, she smiles down at the child with eyes full of love and says she wants to raise her child with her own hands as much as possible. She doesn't want to miss any of the growth of this dear child whom she has given birth to. He ends up smiling and says her child being loved by her is very fortunate. Then she shifts the conversation, having heard he is very knowledgeable about plants, and asks if she can ask some stuff. He blurts out he doesn't mind, she can ask him anything. She was wondering if he knows of any succulent plants that help with burns. She explains one is said to be green, spiky, and the inside is something they can eat like a soft fruit. He admits he has never heard of it before and asks her if someone suffered a burn. She smiles and replies it is not a burn. She wants to use it for her husband's medicine. He asks her if the Prime Minister is feeling unwell. She quietly replies yes, it is for her husband's head, but because of the wind he is unable to hear. She then admits she previously developed a drug to slow its progress, but it only served as a temporary measure. And he has this kind personality, so he's pretending to be strong, saying he's ready to let go of everything. But she knows he's privately worrying about the symptoms as they progress. Surprised, Jace asks if it is alright for her to talk to him about something like this. She replies well, it's a well-known fact. Jace cannot help but think he looks so healthy and villainous. He didn't realize the disease had progressed so far. Celestine also reveals the condition has the potential to be hereditary. Recently, Mark has returned to the mansion and the whole family is working together to improve his lifestyle habits. And this child may end just like her husband in the future, but she wants to be there during their grief. At last, she apologizes for talking too much, but he assures her he is glad he got to know her better. And if there is ever anything he can do, he will always be there to help, and with genuine warmth he hopes they might meet again in the future. As he leaves, the Prime Minister and Mark look at her with narrowed eyes, with the Lord muttering in the end they ran into each other, and he did not expect her to come back so soon. Mark asks her what was she talking about. She replies just small talk. Mark tells her she should be aware of how her words and actions can affect someone's life. On the other hand, the prince thinks she was a noble, family-oriented and a beautiful person. He also wonders if the disease worsens and she loses her family in the future, will she live in sadness alone? He decides that for the time that's coming, he needs to strengthen the relationship between the two countries and become the kind of person who can support her by her side. And then he quietly thinks to himself, is wishing for someone's death a sinful act? But he cannot help but wait for that flower. And that concludes the video today. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Leave a comment if you want another part.